I think one of the important functions of religion is to give structure to our lives. I think religion can help us to organize time. We count time. Somebody counts minutes, somebody counts days. And in a way, there are many ways to live. There are many, and we can live from holiday to holiday, from one trip abroad to the other trip abroad. We can live from one payday to another payday. So how do we structure our lives, I think, tells something. We can live from deadline to deadline. I think these markers are real and often necessary. We need them. And Judaism invites us to live with another rhythm. From Shabbat to Shabbat, from Pesach to Pesach, from one moment in our calendar, in our Jewish calendar, to another. And all materialistic rhythms are fragile and can be taken away. But spiritual milestones are abstract enough to make them a bit more firm. They are, to be honest, they're only in our heads. The fact that we call one day a week Shabbat, it's because we decided so. There's no natural rhythm. There's nothing in nature that tells us that this day should be the day of rest. We just decided so. So it's in our heads. So nobody can take away Shabbat from you or a festival. There's a great line in Natan Sharansky. Natan Sharansky was one of the refuseniks who spent some years in prison for wanting to leave the Soviet Union. And he, at some point in prison, decided that it's Pesach. Well, he knew it's Pesach, but he decided that he's going to celebrate it. He didn't have maror, the bitter herbs. He didn't have horseradish, but he had salt. So he used his salt as something that tastes unpleasant. It's in our heads. And he observed Jewish festival and Shabbat while being obstructed and not allowed to do anything else. And so much of Jewish life, I think, is about counting time. We count the days of the week towards Shabbat. We count the months towards festivals. Somebody counts minutes until the end of the service, until Kiddush. Somebody counts, but we count. And at this season, we count the Omer. Omer, we count it day by day from Pesach to Shavuot. There are exactly 49 days that we count. And we do it every day. When we do that, we count months or days. We notice that time changes. You remember yourself 10 years ago and notice the changes. So when you structure your life from festival to festival, you see the same texts in different circumstances. And that makes you see the trajectory of the world or changes in yourself. And perhaps this is especially important because our world is almost never still. Life changes, society changes, and we all change. Sometimes change is welcome, sometimes it's frightening, sometimes we choose it, sometimes it happens to us, sometimes it brings opportunity, sometimes it brings grief. So one of the deepest gifts of Judaism is that it doesn't pretend that life is stable all the time. I think instead, Judaism gives us rituals, words, and certain festivals that serve as frameworks to help us feel grounded when life is changing. Jewish time makes space or allows space for complexity. It doesn't demand that every day should feel the same. We live, I think, in a time of many changes. And I'm certain that many of us notice it. So how can we approach this change? And this is the question I would like to focus today in this Dvar Torah. But perhaps I think the most powerful Jewish framework for change, or how to address transition, how to live with the change, realizing that tomorrow will be different, is the framework of havdala. We don't do it as often as we probably should in this synagogue. Havdala is the ceremony that marks the end of Shabbat. So now we mark the beginning of Shabbat. So from now on, the day is the day of rest. And it's nice. It's nice to have a holiday. It's nice to not worry about things. But how do you deal with the fact that tomorrow we will come back to the life again, with all our troubles, with all our tasks, with all our thoughts? So Shabbat is nice, but how do you deal with coming back to reality in a way? And that's what havdala is for. So I started to study havdala, and I found some fascinating wisdom, what lies behind it. And I think it can be a lesson. We can take something from it of how to deal with the changing world, how to approach the changes and anxieties that come with it. So Isaac Klein writes about the possible origins of havdala in his Guide to Jewish Religious Practice. This is the book. I'm not going to read the sources, but if you want to read it, the original, you can come back to our YouTube channel and pause and just read. I will retell each source. So he talks about two possible origins of havdala ceremony. First possible theory, that havdala grows out of the very practical experience of doing after Shabbat the things one could not do during Shabbat. So, in other words, havdala may have begun as a home ritual, marking the end of Shabbat restrictions after the Saturday meal. And I will come back to this. On Shabbat, we are not allowed to light candle, so we do it during havdala. You are not allowed to, so with the incense, with a nice smell, which is today usually a cinnamon or something, some kind of box of spices. It used to be that people would put certain spices on a fire and burn it, and that would bring the nice smell to your house. So again, you're not allowed to do it on Shabbat. So you do everything that you're not allowed to do on Shabbat. So that's the idea, and therefore you mark the end. So okay, now I'm allowed to do things that we are not allowed on Shabbat. And I think that gives us one way to think about transitions and changes. After a change, there may be things that become possible, which were not possible before. A new phase of life may, of course, bring sadness, but it may also bring freedom and many opportunities. So havdala inspires us, I think, to ask, what can now be kindled? What can now be opened? What possibility has emerged on the other side? Can we see change not only as disruption, but also as an opportunity? And I know it's hard sometimes, but that's the question that I think, one of the questions that havdala asks. Klein continues. Possibly, he says, havdala originated as a synagogue ritual, as a blessing of a light. At the moment when Shabbat ends, and the next Shabbat, which is the seventh day of creation, or the seventh day of the week, and the new week begins, the first day begins, we'll come back to the first day, we remember the moment of creation of the world. We light a candle to remember that the light was created on the first day. So we come back to the story of creation of the world, and this is why we light the candle, to remind us of the first day of creation. So what I take from it, so when everything feels in motion, everything changes, I think we return. It's helpful to return to the beginning, return to the moment of creation. When we are uncertain about where we are going, we need to remember where we came from. So if the future is so uncertain that you can't cope with it, that at least you know your past and be grounded in it. I think it's another teaching. In times of transition, we need roots. Roots are not there to give us strength. Roots are there to give us strength or ground us. A tree can bend in the wind because of roots. A person, a community, or a people can face changes more courageously when they know who they are, when they know their roots and what they're standing for. So Klein also found another explanation of havdala that comes from a legend, from a Jewish legend of Jewish folklore. A Jewish legend explains that the fire blessings was about Adam's, the first human beings, first experience of darkness after Shabbat. So imagine a first human being was created and nothing is known. The person doesn't know how the world works. And then suddenly, at the end of the day, there is darkness. There is no sun. So Adam was scared. And the Jewish legends tells that at that moment, God gave Adam 2 stones to start the fire. And that legend, according to Klein, has led Jewish tradition to, or has inspired Jewish tradition to mark havdala. Again, another transition from darkness to light, and you light a candle in the dark after Shabbat, again to cope with darkness. So in other words, it's not enough to reassure somebody with words. You need to give people tools to cope with something. Words or acknowledgement of the pain is often not enough. You need certain tools. So another question that I think havdala can inspire us is about what is it that can help us to go through this changing, troubling, turbulent period. And Klein concludes his article about havdala with a Jewish concept. A Jewish concept of the fact that a soul or a person is saddened by the end of Shabbat. So how do you comfort the person about when we're sad about the end of the holiday, the last day of a holiday moment? So tomorrow is we are going home. So how do you deal with that? So the fragrance of spices is you take something with you that can last. The idea is that you put some spices on your clothes everywhere so that when you are back home, you still smell of holiday. And the same with Shabbat. You have spices so that they remind you of that past nice period of time. So transitions are not only intellectual but practical. They are also emotional. Even when change is necessary, even when it is right, and you know that it's right to change, even when it leads to growth, there can still be sadness about change. Havdala gives us a moment to process and gives some comfort to people at the moment of change. So what helps us to feel reassured? What is the reminder of comfort for you? What reminds us that there is still goodness in the world when everything seems dark? And perhaps there's more than that. How can we become the reassurance for others? How can we be the fragrance of spices for someone who is unsettled? How can we be a source of gentleness, hope, and rootedness in a world that often feels harsh and unstable? I think Judaism doesn't exist to give us answers. So if you are hoping that I will give you clear answers, I don't think. Sometimes Judaism provides us with good questions. So today, I think we need to ask ourselves, in our changing world, what are our roots? What are our values? What do we stand for? Where did we come from? We need to also ask ourselves, how can we change how can we see this change not only as disruption, but also as an opportunity? Is there any opportunity that comes with this change? What are the tools and skills we need in times of uncertainty? And the last question, what reminds us that there is still goodness in the world? So, and I hope that we will live in the world of changes and we will remember our roots, and I hope that we will keep the hope alive and really believe that the world has a chance to be a better place. Maybe we can believe that we can see the light in darkness, and maybe we can have strength to be that light for many, many others. Shabbat Shalom.